So my last two videos are flooded in the comments because I was talking about how North Korea is not a dictatorship. So let's go over the history of North Korea so you can understand the Western propaganda that you have been fed about North Korea. And let's talk about the realities of what happened in the Korean Peninsula. So let's get something straight. First, North Korea is not poor because of communism. North Korea is not poor because of some dictatorship. North Korea is poor because of the United States. That is why they've gone through the economic crises that they have. That is why you guys talk about how no one can eat in North Korea. Yeah, because of the US. So let's start off way back in the past. So the Japanese decided they wanted to colonize the Korean Peninsula, even though Korean people live there. But of course, Japanese imperialism, good. During that entire colonization, they literally tried to eradicate the Korean culture. They tried to eradicate all Korean uprisings. They just did so many bad stuff to the Koreans that the Koreans still have some adversarial thoughts towards the Japanese today. After the Japanese were forced to retreat, the United States in 1945 decided they wanted to split up the Koreans. The reason why the United States wanted to do this is because the entire peninsula of Korea was advocating for socialism and communism, South Korea included. Everyone wanted to be socialist and communist. There were many organizations, there were many uprisings, there were many people in which were discussing and sharing books, talking about socialism and communism, something which the United States was vehemently opposed to, of course, because they are the communist enemies. So they decided to split the Koreans on the 38th parallel, right? Which was what now is North Korea and South Korea. They then placed in a puppet to manage South Korea, someone who was 100% anti-communist and had very little connection to Korea, by the way. However, in the North, there was a military person that was praised, which of course is Kim Jong, which was someone who fought back against Japanese imperialism, and it was really praised across the entire Korean Peninsula, South and North included. They really loved this guy because of what he did and how he fought. Then, because South Korea was underneath U.S. military occupation, the United States was occupying South Korea and is still occupying it today. They have tons of bases in South Korea. They have thousands, tens of thousands of troops deployed in South Korea. It is absolutely under U.S. occupation. The North decided to try and free the Korean Peninsula from the United States, and this resulted in atrocities. I don't want to make the video too long, so I'm going to kind of run through these things. The United States then proceeded to drop 635,000 tons of bombs on the Korean Peninsula, particularly heavily in the north. This resulted in them purposely destroying all of the agriculture because the north part of the Korean Peninsula was the one that was more economically viable. They had agricultural farms. They were the real part of the peninsula that was making the most amount of money. They had the infrastructure to make as much money as they could, right? The United States hated this, so they dropped all of these bombs, destroyed their farms, destroyed 20% of the entire population of North Korea. Can you imagine someone eradicating 20% of all of the population in the United States? That is what they did. So 1 in every 4 people were unalived because of the United States. They also then proceeded to destroy dams so that it would flood North Korea and flood the agricultural areas. They literally purposely bombed dams to destroy civilian infrastructure and destroy civilian agricultural development. And almost all of them, I mean, nearly 90% of the people that were unalived were civilians, not military people. Almost every single city was destroyed. Think about that for a moment. Every single city. Jump a little bit more, we have now post-war, after everything has settled between the Koreans, and we have the Armistice Agreement. This is an agreement that the United States had set up. And the South Koreans did not want to sign the agreement. They didn't want to end the war. In the 1950s, the United States then enacts the sanctions on North Korea, crippling it. So now we're talking about a nation that their cities and infrastructure has been leveled. Their agricultural development, which they depended on to feed their people, leveled, and dams flooded everything. So more civilians have been unalived. From there, we then now have the United States placing sanctions on them. You want to get the stuff you need to be able to rebuild your people? I don't think so. Why? Because the Koreans wanted to have their own way of thinking, their own way of governing, which of course is communism. 1990s, under Bill Clinton, he increased the sanctions, literally preventing the Koreans from being able to do trade with 65% of the entire world. It completely isolated the Koreans politically and economically, allowing them not to be able to get any of the basic necessities that they need, but yet they were still able to develop. They were still able to build, and like I think it's only like 15 or 12% of the capacity of what their agricultural development could have been is being able to like be revitalized now, because of course the United States had destroyed it. Like when I say destroyed it, they destroyed it so much to the point to where the soil cannot even be reused again to be able to grow again. Jump to more modern times, 2017, the United States places even more sanctions on them, preventing them from being able to get medical supplies, the medical equipment that they need, preventing them from being able to do trade with China. They were being able to sell their coal to China to get some form of money so that they would literally be able to help their people. And the United States was like, bro, you can't do that. And the United States then cuts them off from one of their most viable options of making money. Textile industry is another very important industry. The United States was like, sanctions on that too. No more money for you guys. This led to mass unemployment because now the two main important ways for the entire country to make money, the United States has sanctioned the entire world from being able to deal with them. So now they can't even produce the stuff they need for their country. Then the United States places sanctions on their fishing exports, another very important critical role that serves as far as the economy goes for North Korea, because they would literally go out and fish and they would sell this fish as far as seafood and stuff across the globe. United States, you can't do that either. Even the UN had to come out and say 200,000 children are facing malnutrition because of the United States' sanctions. 60,000 are at the risk of starvation and death because of the United States' sanctions. This video is already 6 minutes long, but the United States has committed genocide against the North Koreans and against the Koreans in general. And I didn't even talk about in the South, where those same communists and socialists, because the entire peninsula wanted to have some form of autonomy and sovereignty against their oppressors, which is literally the United States. The United States squashed them. They placed spies, and they went and infiltrated the organizations and unalived the organizations from the inside, leveraged the military to unalive all of the organizations in the South Koreans. And on top of that, all of this is illegal. The United States is not allowed to place sanctions outside of international law. The United States is not allowed to limit this trade. The United States is not allowed to do any of this. It is all illegal according to the Geneva Convention, but yet the United States is allowed to do it because of the hegemonic power of the world. And then the United States sets up things like Radio Free Asia, along with other CIA media outlets, right? And from there, they spew this narrative that the Koreans are the reason that their lives look the way it is. The Koreans are the reason that they can't afford to eat or live or build anything that they need as far as their industrial capacity. The United States programs and spreads propaganda across the entire planet to make everyone think that it's the Koreans' fault that they can't do trade, that they can't afford food, when the United States is the one single-handedly placing sanctions on them. It is all the United States. Why did the United States do this? Because they wanted regime change. And of course, the regime change failed because the Koreans know who is doing it to them. It's not their leader, it's not their government, and it is not communism. It's the United States that is doing it to them. And this is the same talking point that's said in places like Cuba. Why doesn't Cuba revolt against their government? Because Cuba's government isn't the problem. It's the United States that is the problem to the Cubans, to the Koreans, to the Iranians, to Venezuelans. All of these people are under the boot of U.S. imperialism, U.S. economic war, U.S. sanctions, U.S. embargoes. It is the United States doing it. It is not themselves. It is not their government.